You are listening to the Social Science KLAI-descope. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Social Science KLAI-descope. I have another very special episode planned for you all today. But before we get into that, be sure to follow the podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else where podcasts are found. And be sure to follow my socials on Twitter at KMDLAI or on Instagram at KMLAIII. You can also, find me on LinkedIn as well. So that's all the promotion we have for right now. I'm very excited to talk about today's topic, which is undergraduate social science courses. And with me, I've recruited two of my better friends in the econ department, Aamia Malik and Dominic Sonkowsky. Woo!
Evan, hi Dom.
Hi.
And yeah, so it's been a while since we've caught up, and I just want to say hi. And for the people that don't know you, why don't you both, introduce yourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Aamia Malik. I graduated with Kevin and Dom back in 2018 from Swarthmore, where I majored in economics and minored in psychology and Asian studies. And my focus now is mostly sort of in the behavioral science space. I'm currently getting my master's at Penn in behavioral and decision sciences.
And I'm Dominic. I graduated also in 2018 with these two lovely people. I majored in economics and minored in Chinese. Right after graduating, I took a job as a paralegal at this small litigation boutique, hoping to find out whether or not I wanted to do law school. Spoiler, no. I'm waiting on hearing back from urban planning master's programs.
Cool. And so, yeah, it's been, how many years has it been since we've graduated? It's been since 2018.
3 years.
Yeah, 3 years. And so a lot has changed in 3 years. I think a large part of, our identity or our career path actually came from our undergraduate studies. And so let's just jump right into it. I just want to first touch up on what were some of your favorite classes that you took in the Swarthmore economics department?
That's a tough question.
Yeah,
I took a class. It was our sophomore year with Professor Sion Panot and Barry Schwartz. And I think it was Professor Panot's first year teaching, and it was Professor Schwartz's last year teaching. And he had been at Swarthmore for, upwards of, I think, 40 or 50 years. Maybe I'm exaggerating with that number, but a very long time. And it was basically a course about behavioral science and public policy. And it was sort of my first foray into the space of behavioral science and how it could be applied in a policy setting. So that was a really foundational course for me, just because it really influenced my kind of career path. So as a result of that class and a research assistantship I was doing with Professor Panot, I ended up doing an internship with the city of Philadelphia at the time. They had a pretty strong behavioral science initiative. I think they still do. I just haven't had a chance to, keep up to date on it. But that was a really unique experience that, again, down the road has resulted in me pursuing the degree that I currently am. And I think what was, fantastic about that course is that it was a really healthy mix of your traditional behavioral economics. I don't know if you can say traditional behavioral economics or if that's oxymoronic, but we'll go with it, and a sort of more traditional psych approach, and having that course co-taught by these two professors was a really unique experience. Also, just pedagogically, it was interesting to watch someone in their first year of teaching and their very last year of teaching and their different approaches to just how a class is taught.
Cool. Dom, do you have any another a class outside of macro that you really resonated with you?
While working at my paralegal job, I thought more and more about what I wanted to do, because it became more and more apparent that being an attorney wasn't it. And one of my colleagues pointed out, hey, you really like to rant a lot about things like how the subway is run and the suburbs and whatnot. You should be an urban planner. And reflected back to Professor Caskey's urban economics course, and also had a really good time writing a paper and presenting about the Taiwanese municipal solid waste management system. Yeah, I don't, so, I think that was definitely one experience that put me on the path that I am.
I can vouch for the fact that Dom got really into this course. I remember him talking about the Taiwanese waste management system on end. And it's actually fascinating. I knew nothing about it prior to, Dom explaining it, but yes, can definitely vouch that Dom enjoyed that course.
Musical garbage trucks, they play a tinny version of For Elise, What's Not to Love.
Was there any other professor that you wanted to like shout out or like talk about that has kind of had some positive influences in your life, or maybe had some insightful comments that you took that stuck with you for a while?
Yeah, so Kevin and I took game theory together, and that was what a class, because it was all seniors. It was last semester, it was spring semester. I mean, the class was good. Professor Bayer, just as a human, is awesome, and she's done a lot of really amazing work in terms of evening out the gender split that's so prevalent in undergraduate economics courses. And I think the years after we left, they have made like even more strides within the department to make sure that there's a more even split gender-wise in intro econ classes, because I think that's where you either get or lose a lot of underrepresented groups, whether it be women or people of color or women of color. Yeah.
Right. And I do remember Professor Baer also offered a gender and economics course as well.
Yes.
Race, gender, and economics.
Gender, and economics.
Dom and I took that one together. Yeah, I mean, Dom, chime in whenever, but I think that course did a really good job at trying to explain some of the disparities we see in the labor market in terms of, again, race-based, gender-based discrepancies, whether it be, in the workforce, or we talked a lot about women acting in roles of caregiving and the impact that it can have on long-term careers, and as a result, at a more macro level, on the economic workforce. One thing that was cool about that class, I mean, overall, it was a fantastic course, and my qualms are not with the course as much as the subject as a whole, was that we got to do kind of a mini research paper at the end, and we got a lot of feedback from our peers as well as from Professor Bayer, and it was a very, collaborative process. So that was a really good learning experience.
Cool.
Yeah, one really interesting point that was raised in that course was a sort of gendered, how gender plays into how, something as basic as calculation of GDP, right? Because GDP doesn't include things like all these sort of like non-market transactions. So like, for instance, if you pay a babysitter, that gets factored into GDP. But if you're just, some family member, like a mother, for instance, taking care of your children, that's not worth anything to the GDP, even though, grab some person on the street, they're going to tell you, yes, mothers taking care of their children is valuable to society.
Sure, yeah.
Economics is a very powerful discipline. We economists have the ear of very, powerful people, and we're seen as the super like legitimate thing that's like, so like, oh, listen to them, to promote the well-being of like, whoever. Economics isn't applicable to everything. Like, if you start holding a hammer too much, everything starts to look like a nail, which I think a lot of economists are guilty of.
Right.
I think that course is really good at, questioning these sort of like basic assumptions that were baked into, a very white, very male subject.
That makes sense. And so that kind of actually ties into what I want to talk about next, which is actually just about how we saw the Swarthmore Econ department when we were there, in terms of from the lens of diversity or from the lens of gender. I don't know if any of you have any kind of experiences, maybe jarring or not jarring, that you wanted to share regarding that.
Yeah, As a whole, I think Swarthmore is a pretty diverse college, given that it is considered to be an elite institution. Those institutions generally have white people as an overrepresented group. Swarthmore is no exception, but it is, dare I say, better than some of its peer institutions.
Okay.
That being said, the economics department, and I don't think this is a surprise to anyone, is a pretty white space and a pretty male dominated space. And I didn't really feel that as much in sort of the bigger introductory courses. So your, intro to econ, intermediate macro and micro, and even intro to econometrics. But once I got to kind of the more of the upper level classes, I remember I took a more seminar based class, international trade and finance. And I think there were like 12 people in the class, or 10 to 12 people. It's been a while. I don't remember the exact number, but I do remember that I was the only woman in the class. And I think I was one of like 2 people of color in the class. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty jarring to me. And I you guys can attest to the fact that I'm generally not a quiet person and I don't have an issue vocalizing. That was definitely something that I struggled with in that class, just because I felt kind of out of place. Right. And everyone in the class was really nice, and I actually had a male classmate, well, everyone in the class was male identifying, reach out to me and kind of acknowledge the fact that, hey, like I know that you're the only woman in this class. I don't know if that bothers you, but if it does bother you, I'm here to work through that with you in any way I can support you. And I didn't really know that I needed someone to reach out and say that, but it really meant a lot and has stuck with me. But it was definitely kind of a jarring experience overall.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. Dom, do you have anything to kind of add to that?
I don't know if I have anything jarring. I think one thing just throughout my entire undergrad experience was just that I heard about all these people having these great relationships with professors. Pretty much all the faculty that I took courses with don't they don't come from a walk of life that resembles mine. I don't actually know if there are any queer Asian professors at Swarthmore. Maybe I'm wrong. It's been a while. Certainly, I don't think there is any in the economic department. So, is this sort of struggling to find those sort of mentor figures that, I heard everyone, not everyone, but, that, people build those sort of relationships. And I just, it's harder to do, if you don't have as much in common. That doesn't mean that I haven't found supportive faculty.
Right.
I've definitely, count, for instance, my relationship with Professor Nakanoff in political science, as really great. She's been super supportive in, me finding out what I want to do with my life. Wrote me some recommendations for urban planning, has always been there to be a reference. Just overall, great.
I think on one end, what Aamia mentioned, it's really nice to have that kind of allyship come out when it does, and to have that kind of support. But it is a jarring experience if you're, look different, seem different, come from, different culture, and you're kind of thrust into a class where everyone else is, somewhat similar outside of yourself. And so having that kind of allyship is really nice. And then to Dom's point, at least for my personal experience, I never really had that connection with a professor or that exposure to a professor until I got to upper level econ classes and taking honors seminars, right? And so for me, if I had to wait to become an honors student in order to have that kind of more fruitful interaction with a professor, or then I just imagine for the others who are taking intro courses or taking intermediate macro and micro courses, who might not have that same type of exposure, might not be as motivated to kind of interact with the professor. I worry about them. And so again, this would kind of perpetuate the pipeline issue where you could potentially have a large diverse pool of students in intro classes and maybe the intermediate classes, but it's all about how you retain them.
And,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
and it's like, just like another thought that I'm remembering having at Swarthmore, like, it's so important that the voices in economics become more diverse because, as I mentioned before, it's a very powerful field.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, especially the more left-leaning people at Swarthmore, were like, ooh, economics is this like, horrible reactionary conservative academic discipline.
Mm-hmm.
It can't do us any good. Like its assumptions are fundamentally horrible. I think it's based on a fundamental misreading of economics. I've always viewed economics as a sort of tool
Mm-hmm.
to analyze, market situation. And, people will use that tool to suit their ends.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you can use economics to further progressive politics and to make life better for the working class, and on and on and on. Like, the just from like, very basic econ 101 things, like market failures, externalities, like, oh, there's some pollution over there. Econ doesn't say like, oh, because like it's contributing to the GDP, like go ahead and spew like all the like dioxin you want,
Mm-hmm.
like, all over these poor dispossessed neighborhoods. Like they're saying, that's a market failure. And like the fact that this guy doesn't have to pay for the fact that he's hurting these people, doesn't have to address that, I is, straight from Econ 101, and, is something that would be pointed out more, I think, if the voices in economics and the people on cable news, the talking heads, whatever, like, were from a more diverse background than just the Wall Street pundit class, like on like the Jim Cramer show or whatever. To totally throw away economics as like a route to that, I think is just fundamentally mistaken.
Right.
Yeah, I'm like mentally snapping for everything you just said, Dom. Like that was 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well put. I don't actually know about the new things that they're doing. I think I've only read updates of how they now have new programs implemented to kind of tutor students such that they feel more involved in their classes, or they feel more comfortable taking those classes. But outside of that, I'm not sure what more information you had regarding kind of the steps they're taking.
I think they're called the invisible hand.
Yeah, that's what
Yes.
they're called. Yeah.
I was back at Swarthmore, I guess it was probably 2019. I was meeting up with some friends who actually happened to be TAs for the Invisible Hand. I don't know if that's what their official title is, but they were TAs for the economics department. So I had to, unfortunately, after having graduated 2 years, go back to an economics review session, which was great. I actually met Professor Sonkowsky for the first time, and he's a delight. That was the week that the interest rate on the T-bill flipped.
Or
I don't know if you guys remember
right?
that. Yeah, it inverted. That's right. That's the word I was looking for. And I remember, I worked at a bank at the time, and it was buzzing. Everyone was talking about it, and it was clear that everybody who was talking about it had no idea what they were talking about. So it was actually like a fantastic time to be visiting the Swarthmore economics department, because Professor Sonkowsky, gem that he is, drew out everything on the board and explained it to me while I was waiting for my TA friends to be done TAing. But to answer your question, I think they're doing this new model where the intro classes are a lot smaller. So there's a lot more hands-on kind of interaction with professors, which I think is really valuable. I mean, I personally, coming to Swarthmore, was really interested in economics as a discipline, but I didn't really have any background in it. It was mostly stuff that I had read kind of on my own, and it seemed interesting. But I found that a lot of my peers in my classes had pretty extensive econ backgrounds already. I know a lot of people had taken, AP econ in high school or the IB system or whatever. So they kind of came to college, in this really intimidating environment, already having the vocabulary to have intelligent conversations about these really complex issues. And for me, coming into that environment, I found it pretty intimidating. And I didn't have a very good relationship with my intro to econ professor. It was a visiting professor at the time. So I unfortunately didn't really go to office hours, didn't really understand how crucial office hours were to your success in college. And I think that having this more small class size structure, hands-on approach with the professor really could have done wonders for a lot of students. I mean, I personally chose to stick with the discipline and grew to love it over the subsequent courses I took, but I had a lot of peers who were in that class, and I remember actively chose to not go on taking more classes in the department just because they didn't have a good experience.
Okay, and so I guess that's kind of like our thoughts of the department. Very honest thoughts. Swarthmore Econ, if you're watching out there, don't send us an angry email or anything. We would be happy to talk to you guys some more about this type of stuff. But I mean, nonetheless, I think for me, Swarthmore Econ was definitely a big part of my life in terms of how I shaped my career so far and whatnot. And so definitely want to leave that out there.
Totally agreed. Yeah, it was a fantastic experience, and I absolutely would have done it again. Yeah.
And plus I met you two too, so it's like it's like the best kind of possible outcome.
Absolutely.
Speaking of meeting you two, was there any kind of fun story or, embarrassing memories that you wanted to share, during your time kind of studying in the
Do you want to hear
department?
about Dom and I's meet cute?
Yes, please.
Okay, so Dom, you definitely remember the story, so chime in whenever. But Dom and I met prior to senior year of high school ending. There was a meetup for admitted students, and it was in San Francisco. Dom is from San Jose originally, and I'm from Davis, but we both ended up at this meetup, and sort of kind of huddled at one end of the table because we sense some sort of safety in one another, I would imagine. We were like, oh man, this is like a nerve-wracking thing that's happening. You seem like a good person.
It was awkward.
It was pretty awkward. I remember Dom had a friend from high school who also ended up at Swarthmore and is a good friend of ours, Vivek. And we were just sort of, sitting in the corner. And we left that being like, well, like maybe see you in the fall. I had committed early decision, so I knew I was going, but I think Dom and Vivek were still deciding, and we kind of lost touch over the summer. And then I remember seeing them on campus and kind of in an awkward attempt to make friends, I was like, hey, like, do you guys maybe want to have lunch sometime? Or maybe Dom or Vivek said that. I don't know. One of us said something about grabbing lunch. But that was our meet cute. Yeah. So I've known Dom the longest.
No, I remember putting my foot in my mouth at admitted students event, because I remember you saying that you wanted to be a professor.
I said I wanted to be a professor?
Yes. And I was still I was still of the state of mind that coming out 2008, that jobs were this impossibly unattainable thing that were you were going to be blessed if you were ever going to get, especially an academic job. I had read so much about how rough the academic job market is. And I after you expressed that you wanted to be a professor, I was like, that's really hard, right? Sort of stepping all over your dreams. It was.
Oh my God, I don't remember that at all. I can't imagine 18-year-old me saying that, but it must have happened. It must have happened.
So were you all both in the same intro to economics course, or no?
No. I was in Professor Bayer's.
Okay. Wait, I wasn't Professor Bayer's. Wait, did I meet you in that intro class? I don't remember.
I don't know if it was 8:30 or 9:30.
Oh my God, that sounds so early regardless.
Yeah, I think I was in the 9:30 one because I said no to the 8:30 one.
8:30 is too early, man.
But anyways, our first time meeting was in intermediate micro, right?
Yeah, I think
All three of us?
we became like econ friends, if
Yes.
you will.
Because
Yes, sure.
We all went through the problem set struggle bus together.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
The utility curves and the cookie and ice creams, and then,
Yes.
and then
Oh
the
my God.
Edgeworth box of two professors stranded on an island. Oh man, so yeah, I remember that part. And then of course intermediate macro, I remember that just being kind of also the same, like studying together, doing the problem sets together, um, and whatnot. But after that, it just seems kind of like we were all doing, I guess we were all doing our own thing, and in the econ department. But I mean, we still found time to like hang out and talk econ with each other, apparently, because I guess I was a big nerd. So
Kevin passed us.
okay, fine. I'm still a big nerd. Sorry.
Getting into the econ seminar room after class was really hard. The econ department was really good about locking the door, but that was like the best study spot if you got in. And I remember senior year, we got pretty good at like sneaking in after. I don't know. We had some good study nights in the econ seminar room senior year for sure.
Yeah. For sure.
Some less productive than others, but overall, studying was done. Studying was had.
Yeah. And then we all made it out alive. So there we go.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin, you really made it out alive with the honors program.
I mean,
Dom and I were like,
yeah.
nope, we're not doing this.
that being said, I mean, so based on your intros, like y'all have done stuff outside of economics as well. So I think Aamia, for you is like psychology. To my recollection, Dom, you did some stuff in political science. And so what are the courses you took in those departments? Which ones did you find interesting? Which ones did you regret taking, maybe? Things like that.
I think the only regret that I have about like, well, no, I have like several regrets about the way it went around Swarthmore. One being taking linear algebra at 8:30 a.m. in my first semester of freshman year.
Okay.
That was ill-advised.
It was ill-advised second semester freshman year as well. I can vouch for that.
I'm glad I took it. But anyways, go on.
So yeah, I did really enjoy my constitutional law course. Like I definitely do really enjoy like talking through these sort of like constitutional law issues, reading through Supreme Court opinions. Like sometimes like listening to Supreme Court arguments is like entertaining to me. And you know, just like also just enjoy just, you know, arguing, like putting argument like forth in at least in the classroom. That being said, I will say to any prospective law students out there that studying the law in a classroom and reading Supreme Court opinions is like the polar opposite of actually practicing law. You know, if you look at the statistics, attorneys have like one of the highest rates of depression by occupation out there.
Wow.
Like because the working conditions can be just totally rough. Like you don't get to have, especially, you know, at these bigger firms, you don't get to have a life. You basically signed yourself away to this corporation. You're very well compensated, sure, but like, you know, you don't really get to enjoy all that money.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like if you want to be a lawyer, you better be pretty sure, you know, you can't be totally sure in my opinion, but you better be pretty sure that you want to practice law. Like that honestly, I think has to be at the core, because there are just way too many people defaulting themselves into law school because they just don't know what they want to do.
That makes sense. Yeah. And then on the other side, Aamia, with you, it was not only economics but also like psychology as well. So how were your, you know, psychology classes, and how did that kind of impact your decision to pursue the current master's that you're at right now?
Yeah, I think I came to the field of psychology a little too late in my undergrad career. I had taken, I think, intro to psychology as a freshman, but I didn't start taking more courses towards the minor requirement until I think like the second half of my junior year or early in my senior year, which is a shame because the field that I'm hoping to enter in now, or rather I have entered with this degree, is heavily psychology based as well. So, I took a social psych course that I think was pretty foundational in my understanding of how traditional economic concepts mesh together with social psych concepts. So that was pretty foundational. I think that the psych department at Swarthmore as a whole, given my sort of minimal experience there, it was a great experience overall. I wish I had taken more classes with them. I also, strangely enough, took a lot of classes in the religion department. I ended up with an Asian studies minor as well, which was very heavily based in the religion department. And, we talked about mentors, and I think a lot of undergrads' experiences, especially at a small institution, are formed by who they kind of click with and professors that they really enjoy learning from. And that happened to me in the religion department with Professor Stephen Hopkins. So he was a really big part of my experience at Swarthmore in terms of coursework, life advice, and I think, that he was definitely the professor I took the most courses with. I think I took like 5 credits or something with him just because he was fantastic.
That man, I like felt he's so nice.
He's truly a gem of a human. He had a commitment to his students that I just it was like next level. I mean, he was just so good at making sure that everyone in his class felt valued, and he made time for everyone, and made you feel like what you were saying and the ideas you had made sense and would sit with you and help you develop them. I think, and that's like the joy of being at such a small school, is getting to really, know that your professors care about your well-being and overall happiness. And, I think that comes back to choosing a liberal arts institution. I had a pretty good understanding that by choosing to go to a school like Swarthmore, I wouldn't leave with the sort of super marketable skills that most firms look for in an undergrad, new hire. And that wasn't something I was going for. I went there to explore different subjects, intellectually challenge myself. And, that's what I got.
Yeah.
This is a maybe less worthy example of even Hopkins' kindness. I misremembered when the final 4 patterns of
Asian religion. I remember calling you from the class.
I had been up super late that night writing a paper, and I thought it was going to be an afternoon final, so I thought I had a solid few hours to sleep. It turns out I didn't. And Aamia called me, and I flipped out and just ran over to where the classroom where the final was being held. And, I was just oh my God, I'm so sorry. And he's just oh, it's okay. And he just gave me the final, and I finished it and it was fine. And, he didn't, stand on procedure or whatever. And the fact that I had arrived an hour and a half late to the final exam.
His concern was more are you okay? Can I support you in any way? Not, oh man, you showed up late to this.
We were all econ majors, and it may seem as of right now the show is just trending toward an econ podcast instead of a social science podcast. But I just want to kind of say again that a lot of our experiences because of Swarthmore are different, even though we're all econ majors, just because of the different courses that we took. And so now that we had our, experiences in undergrad, we kind of relived all of the good, all of the bad, and maybe some of the gripes that we've had. I actually want to talk about pursuit of higher education because I think it's super important in terms of when someone is thinking about kind of next steps, what they want to do and how they're going to get there, right? Especially in the social sciences field. And so I just want to understand from both of you kind of the motivation for applying to a master's program or any other higher education program that you will pursue maybe in the future. and just talk about kind of the decision process of getting there and what you hope to get out of it and the career that you want to have after that.
Frankly, I wasn't really feeling that the career path that I was on with my old job was something I wanted to do long term. And what I kept coming back to was this behavioral economics, behavioral science space. And, beauty of a liberal arts education is that you can get a taste of everything, but that means that you're not really an expert in any one thing. So I knew from prior to starting Swarthmore and kind of after that I would be pursuing at least one higher education degree, if not more. Mm-hmm. And that's what led me to the current program that I'm in right now. And, I laugh at Dom's comment earlier about me telling him that I wanted to be a professor, because now that could be like farther from the truth. The thought of being a professor is not for me. So when I was looking at programs, I really wanted something that was more focused on application and, how can we take these concepts from this really academic space, especially with a field that's as new as behavioral economics and behavioral science, and apply it to the real world, where, in my opinion, the kind of real impact of these more like insular academic disciplines happens. So that's why I ended up at the program that I'm at. It's one of the few degrees right now in the country, at least in the US, that is behavioral science focused and a master's degree. So far it's been a really good experience, definitely more applied. There's some sort of base coursework that you do, again, to make sure that you can speak the language of behavioral economics. But after that point, everything else is more project-based and more group work-based. So definitely a departure from our more lecture-based undergraduate economics career.
Dom?
So yeah, I mentioned earlier that I'm waiting for decisions on urban planning master's programs. So I decided to apply for these programs. I think my interest in urban planning is rooted in the fact, or at least it begins with me never learning how to drive despite growing up in California. There was San Jose, which is very car dependent, strip malls everywhere, whatever, not a walkable environment whatsoever. Yeah. But my mom has family in Hong Kong, and it's just, the starkest contrast possible in that respect. Like the MTR is this fantastic subway metro system that, their on-time statistics are a little bit suspect in that they count on time as at least not like 10 minutes late or whatever. But, as far as I'm concerned, I could walk up to any station and a train would show up in like 2 minutes at the most. Wow. And it would be reliable. It would just like clockwork. And like, you don't have to worry about any sort of timetable or anything like that. There's, in addition to the subways, it's just a very comprehensive all around network of getting people around. There's the buses, the trams, these things called siu ba, or like little bus, that also go to other places where like the bigger double-decker buses don't go. Mm-hmm. And they're like this sort of like form of microtransit that beat like things like Via or whatever to the punch, where you just get on and then you tell the driver like if you want to get off wherever, because it's like a small little thing. There's not that many people. And so, just sort of seeing that environment juxtaposed against where I lived, like, was just this sort of like study of contrasts. But, just observing the fact that in basically more or less the entire US, like ownership or at least operation of a motor vehicle is a barrier to entry if you want to have a full life. And that's just ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Like the fact that you have to like own this machine in order to be able to, access work or like, any sort of upward mobility opportunities, or just like get around and like just be a person, run errands, whatever.
Yeah.
There's also things like the fact that our default use of single family zoning means that we have developed our cities in ways that isn't, financially sustainable. There's like a nonprofit organization called Strong Towns that's, doing a lot of work around this, about the fact that the tax base, the fact that we've spread people out in the way that we have, but we still expect a certain level of infrastructure, a certain level of service, roads, water mains, power lines, all that stuff. All that stuff costs money. It costs more than the already very high property taxes that people, pay to live there, because it's just not sustainable to have people live in such low density environments.
Right.
I could go on and on.
Right. That's kind of interesting to hear what both of you want to do in, maybe the coming years, or what you want to study, and looking forward to all the good things that will happen once those things complete, or, or become reality.
Give me all the power. Like
let Dom be our benevolent dictator.
Exactly.
We'll be eating well and getting to places.
So yeah, that's all the content I had for today. I just want to thank both Aamia and Dom for joining me on a Saturday to talk through things that we've experienced in our undergraduate careers and talk about our future plans. Before we leave off the episode, for Aamia or for Dom, do you have anything you all want to promote? Any kind of social media that you want to promote? Maybe accounts?
Yeah, so I've been volunteering with Welcome to Chinatown. It's a nonprofit initiative that was formed in the wake of the pandemic to support Chinatown small businesses. Chinatown small businesses have been hurting since January 2020, before the pandemic, before mandated closures, because people had racist ideas that Chinatown was somehow going to be more risky than anywhere else in terms of getting an infection. Those business owners have been hurting. They've been hurting earlier, I think, on a neighborhood scale than anywhere else, certainly in New York City. Mm-hmm. And so Welcome to Chinatown has been doing a lot of work, fundraising, storytelling, getting the word out, and a lot of activism work. If you want to follow Welcome to Chinatown, their Instagram account is welcome.to.Chinatown. You can also find them at welcometochinatown.com.
I'll provide all the links also in the description of the episode. Aamia, is there anything you want to plug?
Oh man, that I feel like everybody should just go follow Welcome to Chinatown. That's where I'll leave it at.
All right.
I mean, I am on Twitter, but I'm not super active on Twitter, so.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Once again, thank you so much to the both of you for spending this time with me and having this conversation with me. It was a lot of fun catching up with both of you. Hopefully both of you found it fun as well to catch up. And then, yeah, that's all that is for the episode. Thank you all for listening. See you next time on the Social Science Kaleidoscope.